I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this evening's meeting. I guess it's the first day of winter. It's not official, but it feels like it. So we're going to begin our meeting with an invocation by Pastor Joshua Tompkins, and I'll lead the pledge. Please rise.
God, your word reminds us that though we make many plans, ultimately it is your plan that prevails. Be with the leaders here, guide them in their decisions, and be with us as a community as we continue to lean on you for your support and your guidance through all these times. In your heavenly name, amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Director Aaron Holliday.
Here.
Director Elaine Jones.
Here.
Director Marcia Dobbs-Smith.
Here.
Director Carol Weatherford.
Here.
Director Karen Garcia. Director Steve Trusty.
Here.
Mayor Pat McCabe.
Here. This time we'll consider approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of October 19, 2021. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Director Trustee, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. All in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Recognition of guests. I believe Director Aaron Holliday has some special guests.
I do, and more than I expected. I'm excited. I'm going to ask Coach Brian Barriola to come up and speak on behalf of the Hot Springs Thoroughbreds. And their season just closed. Come on up. Their season just closed this last Sunday, and it's an organization I've become familiar with, and I'm really excited to have gotten to know everybody. And then I'm going to turn it over and let them tell you a lot about what these kids have done this season and what they do here in Hot Springs and why this is good for our community. So thanks for being here, guys.
Hello, my name is Brian Barriola, and I'm the head coach of the Hot Springs mountain bike team. And this is my second season. And for those who don't know, Hot Springs it's called NICA. It's a National Interscholastic Cycling Association. We're like a composite team. We have like 9 or 10 different schools represented from Garland County and outside Garland County. This is quite a few of our kids. We do have about 28 kids on our roster, about 20 that race when we do have race weekends. What our organization kind of teaches, basic principles of having fun, inclusivity, equity, respect, and community. This past fall that we just finished racing, we just had our last race this past weekend. But for the season, we had a time trial and 4 races spread out between Siloam Springs, Barling, Fort Smith, Mountain Home, Rogers, and Fayetteville. Our club, we not only ride, but we try to give back. We have volunteering initiatives. The Arkansas NICA itself, we have 32 teams in the state. And this year alone, we have, with all the teams combined, over 6,000 hours of volunteer work between all of our teams in the communities. And that can consist of trail work, student teaching, advocacy, and Hot Springs was a big part of that by doing our share of trail work. We have peer coaching. We have a lot of kids that will help other kids in the community with practicing and riding and teaching. Race volunteering and class speeches. So I'm really proud of this team. We are one of the smallest teams in the league. We have, like I said, 28 registered riders, about 20 that race. We don't push that a student has to race. It's volunteer if you want to race, but that is part of our league. But more importantly, we do want to teach the kids how to ride safe, be in our community to give back. We have 15 registered coaches, and to be a coach for our NICA league, it's not just sign up, walk out, and help. You do have to go through background checks. You have to do concussion training, first aid. There's different levels of coaches so that you go on to more training to help out, as to complete wilderness training if anything were to happen to someone getting injured. But there's a lot that goes into it, time and dedication to for these kids in our league. I do want to mention we had 3 girls this season, 6th grade girls are relatively new. We had one that was a return rider, but 3 girls I was especially proud of, Olivia, Isla, and Sunny. And they're 6th graders, and out of all the girls in the state, they showed the most improvement. We taught 2 girls how to ride a bike, period. And, that was, going from beginning of the season, learning to ride a bike to learning gears and then actually riding in trails. That's a big deal. We love our trails in Hot Springs and around the community. So we're especially happy that we have places like Northwoods and Cedar Glades to be able to gather and share that with the kids, and the kids give back and see that. I would like to mention that we're a nonprofit team, so anything that we do, from raising money for jerseys, trying to find loaner bikes for kids, it comes out of our nonprofit. And so we work hard during the year to try to raise money to people. Small businesses in towns have been especially helpful to us. And one of our missions is to go into schools and try to bring in kids that wouldn't otherwise be exposed to mountain biking or cycling in general. We'll talk to counselors or principals and try to get kids involved in our team. And we try to take care of certain kids by providing scholarships, loaner bikes, and helping with maintenance. But we also teach them maintenance. We teach them how they should ride responsibly in our trails and in the city, and then giving back by the volunteer program. So, but this is our 21 season team, a lot of the kids, and just if you guys have any questions. But
Thank you. 2 years ago, there was a NICA race here in Hot Springs. We didn't have one this past year. What does the future look like for Hot Springs hosting an event?
So we do hope so our fall season just ended. We do hope next fall we are back in Hot Springs. A lot of the NICA League does like to shift around the race venues. So we were fortunate to have 3 or 4 races in Hot Springs back to back. Not every venue gets that. A lot of venues are one and done, and that's it. They move on to a different one. And there are, like I said, 32 teams in the league, and half of those are in Northwest Arkansas. The other half are spread spread out in the state. So a lot of races gravitate towards Northwest Arkansas. But with the growing population in the rest of the state, we see that coming to Conway, Little Rock, and back to Hot Springs. If not next season, it will be back the following.
Okay. Thank you. We're very proud of what you do, and I know that the volunteer coaches are volunteers.
Yes.
So you do it out of the love and enjoyment. So happy
Yes.
trail riding.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Be safe. This time we'll consider approval of the agenda. Are there additions, deletions to the agenda, or items to be moved from consent agenda to new business? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mayor.
Director Jones, seconded by?
Second.
Director Trustee. All in favor of the agenda as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. City Manager's report. Mr. Burrow.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Thursday, November 11th is Veterans Day, and the city will, in observance of Veterans Day, be closed. City offices, departments, as well as their compost facility will be closed. Solid waste, their residential and Earth Angel recycling, as well as leaf and mulch collections, they'll occur 1 day behind schedule. Thursday collection will be on Friday, and Fridays will be on Saturday. However, the commercial collection will continue as scheduled. Intercity bus and paratransit services will run as scheduled. However, the depot itself will be closed. And of course, fire and police departments will remain open, as well as our Memorial Field Airport and the water and wastewater utility plants. Bamboo at the Badge was just a great success this year. There were literally thousands of people attended there at the Hot Springs Junior Academy. We want to thank our community and statewide sponsors that helped make this event possible, and as well as our Hot Springs Police Department for hosting the event, and other city employees who helped and participated. I'm hearing there was a pirate on board out there, also known as Chief Chapman. So we appreciate all of what you guys did to make that a success. I heard a lot of good comments about that. The city had its third clean sweep of the year, with 17 tons of waste collected. This is a huge endeavor by the planning and solid waste departments, as well as others. The city's clean sweep, this particular one, it concluded Friday. It had approximately 425 structures from Freeman to Main Street, between Albert Pike and the railroad tracks there on Main. As part of that operation, solid waste departments made 98 stops within the neighborhood, picked up 17.3 tons, including 9.1 tons of brush, 7.5 tons of miscellaneous debris, and then about a quarter ton of just litter on the street. So we appreciate all the work that both planning and the solid waste department did to improve the aesthetics of that neighborhood. Also, we continue with a lot of our major projects. Our water supply project continues. We've got a couple more projects that are in completion soon. Another couple of projects that we'll be bidding out that'll be coming before you. These are huge projects, as you know, with the 17 mile of water line, with the raw water line, and then I think it was 13 miles of the potable line. So we'll be bringing a lot of projects to you in short order. That is still scheduled to have completion of fall of 2023. So we're seeing that move along and progressing as it should. We're also working with ADEQ on the consent administrative order for the Gulf Basin. We're still in the design phase there and looking at funding options on how we're going to fund that. But that is something that we continue our discussions with ADEQ. I know that's important to the board as one of your top priorities for 2022, and staff is working on that as we move through the remainder of the year. Majestic site, we are hearing still from the proposed purchaser of that site. They continue to tell us that is still a go and moving forward. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll be bringing you something that, or at least in the next month, bringing you something that will shine light on where we're at exactly. Right now, it's all anecdotal, but hopefully we'll have some contracts to sign soon. Malvern Avenue project, you can see the improvements that are happening there. Mr. Carnahan and several in our project development are there on Malvern, and that project is coming along very well with the medians that are already installed. They'll be coming in now to put in some of the lighting and the sprinkler heads that'll be in the medians, so that continues to improve as well. And finally, on a solemn note, but one that really is important, and that was during the National Police Week, which took place from October 13th through the 17th in Washington, D.C. Corporal Brent Scrimshire was among the officers honored for sacrificing their life in the line of duty. His name was among hundreds added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund hosted the 33rd Annual Candlelight Visual on October 14th. Rachel and other members of the Scrimshire family attended with the police department. Lieutenant Leanne Zahner escorted Rachel and the family and represented Corporal Scrimshire at that ceremony. So, just very pleased that Rachel and the family were able to attend that, and just the love and support that Lieutenant Zahner has provided this family, not only during this event, but since Corporal Scrimshire gave his life in the line of duty. So we are very appreciative of him and for Lieutenant Zahner. That concludes my report.
Very good. Thank you very much. Board of Directors announcements of upcoming events. Any Director Weatherford?
Just want to point out that the health unit is hosting a drive-through flu vaccination clinic tomorrow from 9 to 4 at the Garland County Library parking lot at 1427 Malvern.
Very good.
Mayor,
Thank you.
I have one announcement.
Please.
On November the 9th, which is next Tuesday after our agenda meeting at Webb Community Center under Gateway, we will be having a town hall meeting, and Mr. Carnahan will be there to explain to the residents what's happening in the street there on Malvern Avenue. He will tell us all about that. And we'll have some people from the preservation. You invited Mayor to be there. Thank you.
Any other announcements? We'll move ahead with the consent agenda then. The consent agenda is those items are of a routine nature that do not merit individual discussion. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. So moved. Director Trustee, seconded by
Second.
Director Jones. All in favor of the consent agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Consent agenda is adopted. Old business, we have one item under old business. Let's consider ordinance 02147, and I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only.
To move.
Director Jones, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. We have a motion and a second, all to suspend the rules and read by title only. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion's approved. Read by title.
Mayor, I'm going to refer to this as ordinance 021-46, an ordinance adopting the Hot Springs Board of Directors 2020 Apportionment and Redistricting Plan Map. That concludes your reading. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion
Move.
to adopt. Director Jones, seconded by? Second. Director Trustee. And our staff report will be provided by City Clerk, Ms. Morrissey.
Thank you. Pursuant to state law, the Board of Directors must divide the City of Hot Springs into 6 districts having substantially equal population based on the most recent census data, with one district having a majority of its residents identify as minority. According to the 2020 census, the City of Hot Springs has a total population of 37,930 residents. Thus, each district would have a target number of residents of 6,321. The districts should be so divided that they maintain the core of the existing districts when possible. They are geographically contiguous and compact, maintain the continuity of representation when possible, keep communities of interest intact when possible, and refrain from gerrymandering. Once the Board of Directors divides the city into the 6 districts, the 2020 redistricting packet, including the map of the 6 districts, the maps of individual districts, a description of the boundaries of each district, as well as a description of the census blocks contained in each district, will be filed with the county clerk and the city clerk, as well as submitted to the Garland County Election Commission and Arkansas GIS. That concludes my report.
Any questions of Ms. Morrissey?
Well,
Director Weatherford?
Mine is not a question. I would like to make a motion if I could. Can I do it at this time?
Certainly.
To pull this from the agenda. Director Garcia is not here, and I think this is something that should be voted on by everyone.
So you'd like to table this
I'd like to
until the
table
next
this, yes,
meeting,
till-
which would be the second meeting in November?
Yes.
We have a motion to, that would be the date on that, excuse me. Well, it's- It would be the 16th. No, it'd be the 23rd. We doing it the 23rd? That's 2 days before Thanksgiving.
It's the 16th. Be the 16th.
So the meeting be the 16th?
Be the 16th.
Be the 16th, okay. The 16th. So we have a motion to table item 02146 until the meeting of November 16th. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Director Dobb-Smith. Any discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Tabled until Tuesday, November 16th. So now we'll move into new business. We'll consider Resolution R21-169. I'll entertain, and I'll ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-21-169, a resolution awarding a bid to NatGun Corporation, a subsidiary of DN Tanks, Inc., for a 3 million gallon concrete clear well tank for the Amity Road water treatment plant. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
So moved.
Motion. Who made the motion? Director Weatherford made the motion, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. And Todd Pillar, Engineering Project Manager, will provide a staff report. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening. This is our second contract out at the new water plant site. We took bids on October 11th, and NatGun Corporation, a subsidiary of DN Tanks, was the low responsive bidder. As mentioned, their bid was an amount of $4,192,000. The first contract is well underway. It's the plant site and grading contract. The backwash lagoons are looking really good, and they're starting to fill in all the spots where the new clear well will be. This clear well, do you have a couple photos, Harmony?
I do.
I tried to find some photos that gave you an idea what this size this thing is. It's 160 feet in diameter, and it's 20 feet tall, but about half of it will be buried. So it's all concrete, domed roof, and it's basically a big wide spot in the line for the high service pumps to pump water to the distribution system. We did receive 2 bids. There's another picture of kind of one is half buried. It's about the same size diameter, and it's short and squatty little tank versus the elevated water tank that's next door to it. And the funding for this project will come out of the 2020 water bond issue, and construction with the award tonight. Construction will start probably right after the first of the year, but it'll be complete by the end of 2022.
Very good. Any questions of Mr.
As long as
Pillar?
concrete and steel keep coming, we're okay.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody sign up from the public on this?
No, sir.
Thank you. Discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. We have 5 condemnations that we'll address individually at this time. The first, we consider Resolution R21-170, and I ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-21-170, a resolution condemning certain real property pursuant to ordinance number 6069, located at 238 Walnut Street. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Weatherford, seconded by
Second.
Director Dobbs Smith. And our staff report will be provided by Director of Planning and Development, Ms. Kathy Selman. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. This is, it's kind of sad to have to come to you with this type of request. We are strongly supportive of our neighborhoods and the housing there, and these 5 houses have been now deemed unsafe for habitation and pose a risk to public health and safety. In all 5 cases, these properties are vacant and have been vacant for many years, and the property owner of each is unable or unwilling to make the repairs that are required to stabilize and make safe the structure. And so we're coming to you with a recommendation to raise and remove these structures. So number 1 is at 238 Walnut Street. It's a single-family residence. Neighborhood Services has been working to achieve compliance at this site since 2012. There is interior damage, there is exterior damage, including missing roofing, which has caused damage to ceilings and floors and soffit and fascia. There are missing windows, buckling stucco and siding. The property is owned by someone now living in California. We've been in contact with her on several occasions. She has indicated she would not be able to demolish the structure due to cost, and she has consented to the city removing it, and her consent document was included in the file on this. We sent her a 20-day notice of condemnation. We've received the green card, and the current liens by the city total $87.27.
Very good. Any questions of Ms. Selman? Do we have anybody sign up to speak on this?
No, sir.
Brian?
I don't know that there's anyone to speak. Mayor, anyone here to speak in opposition of Resolution R21-170, condemning certain real property located, are we at 238 Walnut? 238 Walnut. 238 Walnut. There is none, Mayor.
Very good. Any discussion amongst directors? Please call the roll.
Director Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll consider Resolution R21-171, and I'll ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-21-171, a resolution condemning certain real property pursuant to ordinance number 6069, located at 109 Roosevelt Street. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Director Weatherford, seconded by Director Trustee. Again, the staff report will be provided by Director of Plan and Development, Kathy Selman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is 109 Roosevelt Street. It's a single-family residence. Again, Neighborhood Services has been working with the property owners since 2009. There's both interior and exterior damage to the structure from years of sitting vacant, including missing ceiling and wall coverings, soffit and fascia, and a collapsing back porch. This is owned by a couple who are deceased. The property has been in the care of their son since their death. The city has been maintaining the property. There are current liens totaling $63.90. The file was sent to the attorney ad litem, and all attempts to contact the owners and other parties were made by that office. Again, vacant, and we propose condemnation for the purpose of demolishing and clearing the property.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Selman? Is there anyone that in the audience that wanted to speak on this matter?
Yes, please.
Please come forward and
Thank you.
state your name, address, and
My name is Michael Crawford. I attempted to sign up, but I guess the sheet was gone, and I
fine.
apologize because y'all have a lot of guests tonight. I'm going to speak on both properties, the 109 Roosevelt and then the 203 Selma. I'm an attorney, and I'll say hello to Brian and Pat and Bill and even Mr. Chapman. And I'm sure I'm not on the agenda for my birthday yesterday, which was 65, but I'm on the agenda tonight for these two properties. So the person I speak in favor of is Mr. Spencer Dalrymple, who's one of several children. And I have no disparaging remarks to the report that was given, but the reason she couldn't reach anybody is they're dead, and they've been dead for years. And there has been no notice to the estate, which is open. And and again, I have no criticisms of my good friend Scott Hickam, who works for you gentlemen and ladies, but the estate's been open and there's been no notice to the estate. So what I would say to you is that there's not been proper notice, and there are several neighbors who desire to purchase these two properties and who claim, not swearing for them, that they want to rehabilitate those and get them within the city code. If they don't, obviously, the estate can't stop what you're doing. but I believe the proper notice to the estate is the next step that should happen. And I think Mr. Dalrymple, who's the son of the deceased people, and they've been dead for years, would be the proper person to give notice to. And so ultimately, I ask that you just simply table these two, not forever and not for years, but for a few months. We anticipate either the transfer or sale of these properties to the two buyers if they are willing to sign a contract within 60 to 90 days. And ultimately, if they come in and apply for the proper permits, then that would give the city both the revenue from the permits, but the tax revenue from an improved property. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And she said years, and we're not asking for years, but I suggest to you that this is a proper way to do this so that we give proper notice to the estate and give the heirs the chance to either come in here and fight or to sell it and then the permits be issued, and then you have no more, well, hopefully you wouldn't have a need for a condemnation process. So I don't know that any of you know anything about these two properties. I went and looked at both of them, and I don't disagree that something either needs to be done or they need to move on, but I wanted you to have the history of them and the situation so that you could make your decision as to what to do. And I respectfully ask that you just simply ask this be tabled for 60 or 90 days. And at that point, if nobody buys it, nobody applies for permits, and the estate simply does not fight this, then you would still get the same result. And I guess I'll answer questions if I could.
Any questions of Mr. Crawford? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, in light of the fact that service is at issue here, Mr. Hickam served as the attorney ad litem on both of these properties. His report indicated that service had been obtained, but that's not something that's worth arguing and getting this wrong. So I would advise the board to table this until January the 18th. Between now and then, we will either work something out with Mr. Crawford or we will obtain proper service through the estate and its personal representative.
Okay, so we need to have a motion to table till January 18th.
I'll make a motion that we table Resolution 21-171 and 21-172.
We
Gotta
can't.
wait till the next.
Right.
Okay.
We got to get that
We
on
gotta
the
get it on
floor.
the floor first.
So we have a motion by Director Weatherford to table till January 18th, Resolution R21-171. Need a second.
So moved. Second.
Director Jones, any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
In our packet, there is a notice that was sent to John and Barbara Dalrymple. Are those the two persons that are deceased?
Yes.
It was sent to the Crawford Law Firm,
Uh,
and it was signed 4/9/2 of 21. Is that
and
not proper
there-
notice?
Well, he sent something to the office. Proper notice in an estate is to file it with the probate clerk
Okay,
and a copy to the personal representative or legal representative.
okay. Thank you.
If that didn't happen, it will.
Okay. Any further questions on this? Motion to table with a second. Please call the roll.
Director Weatherford.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Mayor McKay.
Aye. Motion to table is approved. At this time, we'll consider Resolution R21-172 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-21-172, a resolution condemning certain real property pursuant to Ordinance 6069, located at 203 Selma Street. To that concludes your reading, Mayor, if you would entertain a motion and a second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Jones, seconded by
Second.
Director Dobbs Smith. Again, staff report will be provided by Director Salmon. but-
Right. The circumstances on this property are pretty much identical to those on the preceding item. I can go through the details, but I don't think you need them.
Not at this point, I don't think, Mayor.
Yeah, we can do a
Again, this
motion to table.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we table.
Director Weatherford, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. Motion to table. Please call the roll.
Director Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Motion to table is approved. Now we'll consider Resolution R-21-173 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-21-173, a resolution condemning certain real property pursuant to ordinance number 6069 located at 110 Laurel Street. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Jones, seconded by Director Weatherford. And Kathy Salmon, Director of Planning and Development.
Thank you. 110 Laurel is a single-family residence. It is vacant. There are two structures on the parcel, but we are only asking to condemn the 110 Laurel address at this time. We have been working in neighborhood services with the owners, both current and previous owners, since 2010. There is interior and exterior damage to the structure, as well as damage to the foundation and exterior load-bearing walls. The property owner is residing in Tucson, Arizona. He has owned the property since 2019. Neighborhood Services has been in contact with him in the past and requested both buildings on the parcel be brought into compliance. A 20-day notice of condemnation was sent to him on 110, and we have received a signed green card back from him, and there are no current city liens on this property.
Any questions, Ms. Salmon, on 110 Laurel Street? Thank you. Any member of the audience that wants to speak on this matter? 110 Laurel?
Anyone here to speak in opposition of Resolution R-21-173 condemning certain real property located at 110 Laurel Street? 110 Laurel Street. There is none, Mayor.
Very good. Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution's adopted. Our final condemnation is to consider Resolution R-21-174, and I ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-21-174, a resolution condemning certain real property pursuant to ordinance number 6069 located at 124 Gardner Street. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Trustee, seconded by Director Weatherford. Again, a staff report is provided by Kathy Selman.
Thank you, Mayor. 124 Gardner is a single-family residence. It's been vacant since 2011. It has both interior and exterior damage to the structure, including water damage to load-bearing walls, siding, and joists. This property is owned by C. Jane Smith, who is deceased, and her son, Gary Franks, who is not deceased. Notices were issued by Neighborhood Services to Mr. Franks requesting repairs to be made. When all attempts to make contact failed, the file was sent to the attorney ad litem, and all further attempts to contact the owners were made by that office. There are current liens of $210.68 on this property.
Very good. Any questions, Ms. Selman? Thank you. Anyone in the audience want to speak on this issue? Ron?
Anyone here to speak in opposition of Resolution R-21-174 condemning certain real property located at 124 Gardner Street? 124 Gardner Street.
Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Our final action item of the evening is to consider Resolution R-21-175 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution 21-175, a resolution approving a conditional use permit for Covenant Recovery, Inc. to expand an existing residential group living facility located at 276 Linden Street and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt. So moved. Director Trustee, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. And the staff report will be provided by Director of Planning and Development, Ms. Kathy Selman.
Thank you, Mayor. On March 11th, 2021, Hot Springs Planning Commission unanimously approved with conditions a conditional use request by applicant Covenant Recovery to increase the maximum number of residents at an existing residential group living facility zoned C3, Office Neighborhood Commercial, at 276 Linden Street. Hot Springs Board of Directors considered an appeal of their determination on May 4th, and at that time, they overturned Planning Commission's approval of the conditional use permit. On July 6th, 2021, Hot Springs Board of Directors, in reconsidering their May approval of the Planning Commission appeal, voted to remand Covenant Recovery's conditional use application to Planning Commission. In voting to remand, the board specifically noted a need to study three things: whether limiting the resident population to narrow the residents and activities to those covered within Covenant Recovery's Arkansas Department of Human Services license, not allowing resident placement under a future Arkansas Department of Corrections license, and limiting the number of residents, along with other conditions, could improve neighborhood compatibility. Following notice, on September 9th, Planning Commission heard this item. They accepted the findings and recommendations of the staff report, and with an 8-1 vote, they approved the conditional use at 276 Linden Street with 14 conditions. All right. This Planning Commission action, hearing the item on remand, has been appealed by Mark Toth, and he has listed 3 areas which he believes were errors in Planning Commission's decision. Those were non-compliance with Arkansas Code Annotated 1693-1605, differential treatment regarding ACA 16-123-307E, and failure to comply with Hot Springs Code Section 16-278. Roxana Wallace also appealed Planning Commission's September 9th action, and she noted that the proposed conditions do not sufficiently protect the neighborhood from the negative impacts Covenant's activities will generate. And she listed 6 issues: fencing, commercial activities, use of the site's paved parking lot for parking and deliveries, prohibit transfer of residents from other Covenant facilities, reporting of unauthorized or unsupervised resident absences, and compliance and oversight. So we'll go through the allegations, beginning with the 3 for Mr. Toth and then looking at the 6 for Ms. Wallace. Mr. Toth mentioned Arkansas Code Annotated 1693-1605, which requires a license if a criminal offender has been transferred, paroled, or placed on probation through the Arkansas criminal justice system, shall not be sent via court order to a transitional housing facility that is not properly licensed by the division. And he alleges in his appeal that Covenant is relying on the Planning Commission's endorsement to continue such court-ordered placements, even though they do not have the required license from the Department of Corrections. In response to that, we note that Arkansas ACA 1693-1605A says in order to operate a transitional facility, housing facility for criminal offenders who have been transferred, paroled, or placed on probation through the Arkansas criminal justice system, the operator shall obtain a license by facility type from the Division of Community Correction. Now, Arkansas law cannot be waived by Planning Commission. Any applicable state law requires, regardless of Planning Commission's intent or action. Arkansas Department of Community Correction enforces failure to observe license requirements. Mr. Toth asserts that they do not have the required license from the Department of Corrections. That being said, the city attorney has advised staff of a ruling by the Supreme Court of Arkansas that could have a bearing on this issue. And that is Arkansas Department of Community Corrections v. City of Pine Bluff. That was in 2013. And at that time, the court held that ACA 1693-1603 assigns to the Board of Corrections the responsibility to promulgate rules that set minimum standards for all transitional housing facilities in the state of Arkansas. And it goes on and on about zoning and the Department of Corrections. But in summary, the legislature specifically provided in 1693-1604B1 that the entity responsible for the enforcement of compliance with a municipality's zoning ordinance was not the municipality, but DCC, Department of Community Corrections, a state agency. And they continued, we find nothing in the statutory scheme that indicates a legislative intent to waive sovereign immunity. And as such, should the conditional use applicant become a licensed transitional housing facility, the Arkansas Department of Community Correction, and not the City of Hot Springs, will be responsible for enforcement of compliance with the zoning ordinance. The second one was differential treatment regarding ACA 16-123-307E. That is a section of Arkansas Code that deals with fair housing. Mr. Toth mentioned another case, New Choice in We4. They were variously known. This was a proposed group home on Grand Avenue. Mr. Toth noted that a condition was added for the Board of Directors on August 20th, 2013, that said, it did go to the Board of Directors in August of 2013. I'm trying to make this shorter, trust me. That went to the board for specific action regarding the site plan. And there were specific things that the board said in remanding that back to Planning Commission. So when Planning Commission sent this item, or when it was appealed, it went back to the board with 5 conditions. The board added 2 conditions. So, and that included one that says, any person convicted of illegal manufacture or distribution of a controlled substance shall not occupy 710 West Grand Avenue, New Choice Group residence. And Planning Commission's conditions on that case, New Choice, We4, did not include a prohibition on residents convicted of illegal drug manufacturing or distribution, although the board did add such a condition. When compared to the proposed conditions for covenant recovery this year, the conditions, while not identical, do limit considerably the scope of operation, for covenant recovery and equal or maybe even exceed those that were suggested in 2013 for the proposed group living facility in the Quapaw Prospect Historic District. Mr. Toth alleges that the Whittington Valley neighborhood was considered in a different light than the Quapaw Prospect neighborhood for demographic, race, and income reasons. For New Choice, individuals convicted of drug manufacturing or distribution are prohibited. For Covenant, individuals convicted of sexual or violent crimes are prohibited. Whether one is more protective than the other, or whether one protects individuals of specific income or ethnic backgrounds better than the other, would be difficult to demonstrate. In both cases, specific testimony at project-specific hearings built the type and nature of conditions that Planning Commission ultimately recommended. Mr. Toth also mentions that a standard conditional use condition regarding the applicant having an affirmative duty to comply with all federal, state, and local laws now in effect or which may hereafter come into effect, the violation of such laws shall constitute grounds for revocation or modification of this permit by Planning Commission per Hot Springs Code 16279. Now, that condition can easily be added to this one, should the board desire to do that. It was omitted through oversight, and if you want it in there, it can certainly be added. The third allegation from Mr. Toth is that Hot Springs Code 16278, which requires consideration of adopted plans in conditional uses. He alleges that the Whittington Valley 2013 Park Whittington Plan Amendment was not considered. I would like to say that aside from investment by public or private means, zoning is one of the major ways to implement an adopted plan. Where a plan, adopted or not, is a vision, zoning is the law. 276 Linden Street is Zone C3, Office Neighborhood Commercial, a district permitting a variety of commercial uses and activities. It has been commercially zoned for decades and has at various times been a school, a medical clinic, a shelter for women and children, and a daycare facility. Prior to Covenant's acquisition, Quapaw House, who acquired the property in November of 1993, appears to have operated a residential treatment center of undocumented scope. 276 Linden is commercially zoned, not residential. The elements of the Park Whittington Plan, the 2013 amendment, which would apply here, are commercial intrusions into residential areas should be minimized, and buffers will be placed between commercial and residential areas. We're continuing a long history of non-residential use on commercially zoned property that does not represent commercial intrusion. The plan also states vehicle traffic for commercial developments will use the neighborhood's major arterial roadway, Whittington Avenue. Commercial developments shall not use the valley side streets for ingress or egress. 276 Linden Street is an existing commercially zoned property with its public road frontage on Linden Street. Linden Street connects to Whittington Avenue, and it is not reasonable to demand that an existing commercially zoned property be denied use of the sole public street upon which it fronts without compensation to the owner. Another element of the Park Whittington Plan 2013 states neighborhood stability and safety will take precedence over the unnecessary movement of traffic. And condition number 8 from Planning Commission seeks to respond to that by limiting delivery hours. With regard to Ms. Wallace's allegations, she raises fencing. Condition number 4 requires a solid privacy fence to be replaced and maintained over the current chain link fence. Commercial activities, this kitchen is not open to the public, nor does the applicant in any future plan intend to operate a restaurant. There is a retail food establishment license from the state that is required for a facility such as his, that is only for residents. Use of the site's paved parking lot for parking and deliveries. Again, condition number 8 addresses deliveries. She seeks to prohibit transfer of residents from other covenant facilities. Again, resident population is defined by state licensing requirements. Reporting of unauthorized or unsupervised resident absences. Residents may be subject to state license requirements. Those are not enforced by the City of Hot Springs. And as to compliance and oversight, zoning enforcement of land use conditions are available, and the state will enforce the monitoring of patients and residents. Covenant has responded to both of the appeals and, in short, is willing to agree to mostly everything that was in there. Those conditions, new conditions, have not been included in the resolution that is before you. They note specifically they will abide by all conditions in the permit. They are open to the board placing a condition stating that any person convicted of illegal manufacturing or distribution of a controlled substance shall not occupy Covenant Recovery at 276 Linden. To the extent that the board finds it necessary to add more fencing requirements, Covenant would abide by those conditions. They have no objection to proposed overflow parking or delivery restrictions, and they agree that they will not transfer residents or patients to its facility in a manner that will result in a violation of the terms of the permit or applicable zoning regulations. So, having said all that, Covenant has no objection to any reasonable oversight requirements. On October 25th, Zachary Wilson, attorney for Covenant Recovery, submitted a reasonable accommodation request regarding Covenant Recovery's use of 276 Linden Street. The request, in brief, is reasonable accommodation regarding property use. The request notes that on August 26, 2021, Covenant reduced their request to 32 residents from the 48 originally requested in March. On September 9th, the Planning Commission approved the request from Covenant with certain conditions, and Covenant has no objections to the conditions placed in the conditional use permit by Planning Commission. Regardless, Covenant requests as a reasonable accommodation relief from any classification pursuant to Hot Springs Code Section 16-152 that otherwise would prevent it from housing 32 individual residents or denial of the conditional use permit already approved by the Planning Commission. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination. They are asking under the Fair Housing Act for reasonable accommodation. That act prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in housing transactions. They define in the act a person with disability to mean an individual with mental or physical impairments that substantially limit one or more major life activities. And that major mental or physical impairment may include conditions that include alcoholism or drug addiction. The Act also protects persons who have a record of such impairment or are regarded as having such an impairment. Regarding discrimination in housing based upon disability group homes, the Justice Department's website says some individuals with disabilities may live together in congregate living arrangements, often referred to as group homes. The Fair Housing Act prohibits municipalities and other local government entities from making zoning or land use decisions or implementing land use policies that exclude or otherwise discriminate against individuals with disabilities. They also say that local government cannot refuse to make reasonable accommodations in land use and zoning policies and procedures where such accommodations may be necessary to afford persons or groups of persons with disabilities an equal opportunity to use and enjoy housing. And they note that Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, known as the Fair Housing Act, requires HUD and recipients of federal funds from HUD to affirmatively further the policies and purposes of the Fair Housing Act, also known as affirmatively furthering fair housing. The obligation to affirmatively further fair housing requires recipients of HUD funds to take meaningful actions in addition to combating discrimination that overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on protected characteristics which include disability. In conclusion, the Planning Commission did not err in its approval with conditions. With Planning Commission's September 9, 2021 conditions, Conditional Use Application 21-120, a request to expand an existing residential group living facility located at 276 Linden Street, Covenant Recovery meets the requirements of Hot Springs Code. If the board so chooses, an additional condition affirming the need to comply with other non-zoning regulations could read, "An applicant has an affirmative duty to comply with all federal, state, and local laws now in effect or which may hereafter come into effect. The violation of such laws shall constitute grounds for revocation or modification of this permit by Planning Commission per Hot Springs Code 16279. The obligation to affirmatively further fair housing requires recipients of HUD funds to take meaningful actions, which include to foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on protected characteristics, which include disability related to addiction to alcohol or drugs. The requested modification is reasonable as it imposes neither undue financial or administrative burden on the local government, nor does it create a fundamental alteration in the local government's land use and zoning scheme. And that concludes the presentation.
Any questions of Ms. Selman at this time by directors?
No, by directors.
We'll allow public comment here shortly. Any questions of the individual directors for Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would like to point out while Ms. Selman's here, she brought to my attention that in the 8th whereas clause of the resolution, there is an error. It indicated that the vote at the Planning Commission was unanimous. It was not. It was 8-1. I would ask that you consider a motion to amend to correct that error.
We go back to the
Page 75 of your packet.
page 75. Thank you. So it's whereas on September 9th, that paragraph?
Yes, sir.
So right at the last sentence, then approve the application with a unanimous vote. Be basically approved with the application with a vote, 8 in favor and 1 opposed.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion to amend?
A motion to amend that we change the minutes to reflect that the vote was actually 8-1, not unanimous.
Motion, we have a second.
A second.
We got a second. All in favor of the motion to amend, signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Resolution R21-175 is amended. We'll go back to the those who have signed up to speak, and we'll begin with Mr. Mark Toth. Toth, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
I have a handout that's coming around, so. Is Mr. McKinsey?
Before you get started, I want to remind all those who are called to the podium who have signed up to speak that we do have a 3-minute rule, and we ask that you abide by it. We have a number of people who have signed up, and we probably have nearly an hour's worth of individuals to speak, and then there's transition time between speakers. So we'll have a clock displayed on the TV screen, so it's there and visible for you, and so please recognize those time limits and plan your important talking points accordingly. So we'll go ahead and begin at this time.
I want to start by saying that I'm opposed to this facility. 32 people is too much, but because we're only given 3 minutes to talk, we've kind of divvied it up. So I'm going to talk about, I think you need some additional conditions. These are conditions that Ms. Selman touched upon, many of them, and that, as she said, the applicant has already agreed to. So they are important to protect the neighborhood. First, any person convicted of the illegal manufacture or distribution of a controlled substance shall not occupy 276 Linden Street Covenant Recovery. You gave this protection to Quapaw Prospect. We in the Whittington Valley request the same protection. Modify condition 2 to read, no halfway house, transitional housing, early release, parolees, court-ordered placements, that's the new insertion, court-ordered placements, or other Department of Correction activities or residence. The activity is not allowed unless they have the license. This just puts it in writing, just makes it absolutely clear that there's no ambiguity, because in the past they have had court-ordered placements in the facility. Next one would be the fencing. The fence, as written, the fence provision doesn't make sense. It's grammatically incomprehensible. It says, a solid privacy fence will replace and maintain the existing fence. What does that mean? They're going to replace it all? Just maintain what's there? So it should read something along the lines of a solid, opaque, 6-foot tall privacy fence shall screen the facility from adjacent residentially zoned areas. Remember, it's against a public park. That's just common sense. Modify condition number 8 to read, deliveries are limited to normal business hours of 8 to 5. All parking and delivery vehicles shall use the facility's paved parking area. No overflow parking onto Linden. Linden's a very narrow street. And again, as Ms. Selman said, the applicant has agreed to that. Condition 5 that I put down here is about transfers. And again, the language is exactly what Covenant has already said. Number 6, that Covenant provide to the city copies of all of its licenses. That's all, just its licenses. That would be the oversight. Make sure that their licenses are current and that they have to provide copies on an ongoing basis. So there's just no ambiguity as to which licenses they're operating under and that they're all current. And then the last one, which Ms. Selman has said, this process has been so haphazard. Planning is so overworked, so understaffed. There's been so many omissions. You know, they forgot to include just standard boilerplate that they put with every conditional use about the requirement that they have to follow the laws. So I would request that these 7 conditions be added to the permit, and I'm finished. Any questions?
Any questions of the presenter? Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you. This time I'll call upon Mr. State Representative Richard McGrew. Excuse me. Well, if you've signed up, we'll call your name when it's time. Thank you. Please restate your name and address, please.
All right. Thank you for having me here tonight. I want to first of all thank each one of y'all for your public service as an elected official. I know sometimes it's a tough position, so thank you so much for there, and thank Kathy Selman for all the work she's done on this. Many of y'all know that I served on the Planning Commission for 8 years. The Planning Commission has done a lot of work on this project twice now, and I would ask you to respectfully honor the Planning Commissioners and the work they've done and support the findings that they have. Also, why do we need this facility? I will say that I was a big part of getting Covenant and Harbor House both here in the community after Harbor House went under, and it left a gaping hole not just in Garland County but in the state, and a lot of addicts that could have been in a place where they could get the care that they needed were wandering the streets, and it was really needed here. And why too, actually I also contacted RCA Recovering Centers of Arkansas to come here also, which they showed some interest but didn't wind up going through. Because if you understand drugs and alcohol and the surge that's on our community, first of all, it's a terrible thing, and it does contribute to the crime in our communities in a huge way. But having facilities where they can go and get the help they need and change their life is extremely important. I can tell you, as a person who has it in my family, it's extremely important when it pulls at your heartstrings. And why Covenant? I've been with a child who walked to in a center that the center said $8,000 before he steps in our center. And that's where a lot of them are. Covenant is different. Covenant will help, and a lot of times the addict is at the lowest part of their life. They've lost job, they've lost everything. They don't have any money, and a lot of times no insurance. And Covenant will accept and work with them, where Harbor House is a different situation. We need both. And Harbor House also takes care of women, which RPM does in town. So there's a huge need, a huge need. And one thing I know, that most families have drug and alcohol problems in them. And if you have a child, a son or a daughter, that you were begging for a place like this to take them, to keep them from going out to where you didn't know whether they were going to live or die, and to see them go into a place like this and get the opportunities where they do change lives, you would absolutely support this. It's a great thing. It's been vetted more than most things. I just plead with you, please approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of directors to the speaker? Thank you. Mr. George Rice, please come forward, restate your name and address, district, please.
My name is George Rice, 734 Whittington Avenue, Board, or District 1, I believe. Yeah, I'm a resident, have been since 2018 on Whittington, and since I've been there, I've been trying to improve my property, got rid of the peeling paint, replaced the rotten wood, plant perennials. And I've noticed my immediate neighbors are doing that. It reminds me kind of like when I used to live in Austin, Texas, where some of the older neighborhoods really tried to keep things up and to make a nice neighborhood. And I just honestly have thought about this a lot, and I can't see how what was first termed a correctional facility, and now it's being referred to as a group living facility, is going to in any way enhance our little neighborhood. And so I respectfully would ask you to consider these residents in your decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Millie West. Ms. West, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Hi, I'm Millie West, 407 Whittington Avenue. I too thank you for your service and all the research that's been done. I did have a question. Do those HUD funds you're talking about require that the facility be within the city limits? Because, yes, I just think we too have had drug abuse in our family, and the only way this family member got help was by being in a facility outside of our city limits, unable to get to his fix. My comments tonight are also centered on conversations I had with Aaron, District 1 representative, when I asked her about the 48-bed facility, thinking it was too much, too many. I was disappointed that she seemed to be more interested in the welfare of the owner of this property than the constituents who elected her. And when we met, I told her that I loved her. I gave her a hug. She's called me friend, but I did feel like it was a done deal. And the fact that she even talked to me, she talked to my husband and me on the phone with a long conversation, about 30 or 40 minutes one day. And at the end of the conversation, we knew that she was in favor of it. And late in the conversation, pretty much the last thing she said to us is, "I'm really not supposed to be talking about this." And again, it's a rule. I don't understand why it's in place, but I know it's in place. So you guys are all wonderful for being here and serving, and you're looking at paper. You're looking at words on paper. You're listening to descriptions of things, but I sit on my porch and I look at the traffic every day. I look at the walkers. I watch the team, the soccer team from the Arkansas School of Math, Science, and the Arts going every afternoon to practice soccer in Linden Park. I've been to Linden Park to watch my grandchildren play soccer and practice with the YMCA teams. It's a very special neighborhood. It's really, really important to those of us who live there to feel that we are represented, and I don't think we feel that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kimberly Mallett. Kimberly Mallett, please come forward, restate your name, address, and district, please.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Mallott. My address is 277 Linden Street. I've never been to a city council meeting before, so pardon me if I don't know the lingo. What I'm really here to say is that this facility is actually directly across the street from my home. A facility like this saved my life. You know, people need help, and as one of the gentlemen that spoke before me stated, the city of Hot Springs needs a facility where people can go and get rehabilitated. The facility has been in operation. I in no way feel jeopardized or in danger. I have been in a facility like this. I know how they operate. You know, they're not going to be wandering around the neighborhood. They're there to get help, and we need to give them that support. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Very good. Well, thank you. Ms. Bernstein Kilgore, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Hello, my name is Bernstein Kilgore. I live at 323 Walnut Street And I'm here again to speak not against people getting help, as I said twice before, but the fact of the location of the facility. Facilities of that kind are not designed to be in residential neighborhoods. My kids are grown, my grandkids are grown, but at the same time, our neighborhood has a lot of children. And it's not a good thing to make those situations where they would be compromised. People can freely go back and forth between the public park and their facility. And as I've said before, you put them in a compromising position. They're there to get help, but when you have people from the outside that can easily have access to those people who are on the inside, you have problems. I think the city should partner with the state of Arkansas and establish a facility out there on the Garland County detention property where they can have a large enough facility, properly staffed. And that was another thing, they don't have enough staffing to accommodate 32 people. I think you should put it out there by the Garland County Detention Center and partner with the state to have adequate staffing, not in a residential facility.
Thank you. Any questions of the speaker? Thank you. Heather Shadwick. Ms. Shadwick, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Hello, my name is Heather Shadwick. I reside at 1309 Greenwood. I'm here to support the recovery community in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I have been in Hot Springs since the year of 2009. I have been rehabilitated. I went through Quapaw. As you all know, that was the Harbor House was Quapaw. Had been, I believe I knew the whole board, several of them from there. I've never been in here, so I'm a little nervous to, excuse me. I just want to say that people do recover. You know, that there is opportunities for people who, like me, were at the end of the rope when they have no more options and no other choices. Yes, we absolutely, Hot Springs is known for their recovery community. I don't know if any of you, like I've heard before, have family or, family with friends or children. Yes, I also know that I worked at this 276 Linden when it was for women and children, when it was Barb's Place. I was an employee there. And the recovery community in Hot Springs is very big. It's huge. And there's a lot of people who have a big heart and are in this recovery community. We go to all these centers throughout Malvern, Arkansas, all of these places in the general area, and Carrie H. and I, it's called Hospitals and Institutions through Narcotics Anonymous, that we share with people in facilities like this, our way, Narcotics Anonymous, and that people do recover. And I don't know if I'm on the right track here, if I'm supposed to be here telling my story or what I'm representing, but I do believe that Hot Springs needs any type of rehab facility because people do change and people do recover. I've been in recovery for 13 years, and I'm grateful for that. So people do change, and people can change. Sometimes it takes being at the end of a road and not having any other options to change, though. And those generally are people who have been institutionalized. So I thank you, and that's all I have to share.
Thank you. Mr. Gregory Crane. Mr. Crane, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
My name is Gregory Crane. I'm an attorney from Malvern. I was hired by the Whittington Neighborhood Association and some members of the neighborhood. I was glad to hear that she said that those restrictions that they wanted, that Covenant Recovery did not disagree with them. So I would ask you all to put those restrictions into the conditional use permit, so if they're not abided by, they can come back here and have that changed or maybe do something better. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Parrott. Sharon Parrott. Lance, will you help her? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon Parrott. I live at 140 Cooper Street, and I'm in District 3. I am here for covenant recovery. Initially, I was against it based on misinformation. I took Jeremy up on his offer to come and learn more. I even invited Mark Toth and one of his main petition gatherers who, no way, we're not talking to those people. Since then, all I've heard is a lot of discriminatory statements. There is hope. People can recover. I have been on that property. I have been there unannounced, unscheduled, unplanned. They have more staffing than the state requires them to have. Those guys are kept on the property. They are not roaming the neighborhood. There is plenty of illegal, criminal, drug activity, all kinds of stuff going on in that neighborhood, and covenant recovery is not the cause of it. After the Planning Commission meeting where it got kicked back, I spoke to Ms. Kilgore after the meeting and pointed out the number of registered sex offenders in that neighborhood. She's not worried about it. They're not supervised. Jeremy's guys are supervised. One of the petition gatherers had told me of some issues that they had in the neighborhood from the mental health group home down the street. Residents out roaming the street, chasing people in the park. There was no get on the bandwagon and run them out. This is all personal bias against recovering addicts, and I think the city board has had more than enough of its time wasted dealing with people wanting petty actions taken and discriminatory actions taken. Planning Commission has spent enough time on this. Jeremy has invested more than enough money in this project. We need this facility in Hot Springs. We need quality in Hot Springs, and I'm all for this. Reasonable accommodation is what is needed. Several comments have been raised about the city purchasing this property for just what he bought it for and making it into either a greenhouse or making it into more parking for the soccer fields. My daughter played soccer on those fields 21 years ago. The parking is the same, the runoff is the same. Where was Mr. Toth 21 years ago? He moved into the neighborhood after Quapaw House was in operation. What's your beef? I live on a street that has a variety of transitional living. I'd rather have those kinds of people as my neighbors than the sex offenders and the other folks that are roaming the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Renita Philly Hale, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
My name is Renita Philly Hale. I live at 501 Belvedere Drive, and that's District 1, though it is on the edges of it. I am here to express, as a former mental health professional, my concerns with the location of the facility for the benefit of those who may be there. What I mean by that is, you've heard the expression, kids in a candy store. I think it's fortuitous that I spoke just after Ms. Pratt, because she mentioned the unsavory influences in the neighborhood, the drug dealers, the sex offenders, but specifically the drug dealers. Why would you place people who are trying to get off of substances in a neighborhood with existing drug dealers? The same reason you wouldn't want unsupervised children in a candy store. You're setting them up for failure. I have no doubt of Mr. McKenzie's sincerity, and a lot of the people who have spoken in advocating for substance abuse treatment. God love them. That's great. But let's do it right. Research has shown that the most successful substance abuse treatment programs are in an extremely rural location. Why? Less temptation. Individuals who have a long history of substance abuse, research again has shown that these individuals' emotional and social development stops at the point at which they begin serious substance use. And most substance use begins in the early to mid-teens. So whether you have a 40-year-old man or a 25-year-old man, if that man began serious substance use at the age of 14, that is where their emotional and social development stopped. So are we not setting up these overgrown adolescents for failure instead of taking care of them by placing this facility in this neighborhood? Yes, we are. I have worked with the mentally ill, with the substance dependent, with all types of vulnerable populations. I currently work with dementia patients. One of our hallmark standards where I work is to make the environment the most conducive for their health. The environment of being in the middle of a neighborhood where there are known drug dealers is not conducive to recovery. It's just not. Let's not put these kids in this candy store. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rose Thurman, please.
Good evening. My name is Rose Thurman. I live at 123 Breeze Street. That is in District 1. Thank you, board members, for allowing me to give my opinion, give my choice. Please vote no on the expansion from 8 clients to how many ever clients that Mr. McKenzie wants. Any additional clients would implode this area at 276 Linden Street. I feel compassion for people in recovery from addictions. Please redirect any more than 8 clients for Covenant Recovery to a more secure location outside our city limits. Harbor House, they could expand Harbor House. It's already under their direction. Please vote no on the expansion for the clients. And I also want to address, I was at the City Planning Commission board meeting, and it was very interesting because the last person who was questioning Mr. McKenzie was told to stop. The questions that person was asking was about his licensing, about his use, and they were told to stop. So I'm glad that you clarified that not all of the Planning Commission board members voted for Mr. McKenzie. So again, move the people to a more secure location that is not detrimental to their health. Our neighborhood is quiet. We're trying to rebuild it. The people who come and go there, the drug dealers, if there are sex offenders, those are, I hope the police are trying to catch those, but please don't put people at risk to relapse in our community, so close to the liquor stores and those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to thank all those who are coming forward, being respectful of the 3-minute time limit. Appreciate that. Ms. Pat King, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Pat King, 219 Glade, District 1. I spoke the last time y'all listened about this, and I spoke against it because I had some serious concerns. I had a husband who gave his mind for his country and wound up heavy on drugs. I know what the problem is. I've studied it. I found that most drug treatment facilities are there for the profit. This is a nonprofit business. When you got a for-profit one, they come in, the insurance pays for yay many days, the government pays for yay many days. They maintain them, and when the time's over, they're out, they got their money and run. These folks are not a for-profit. They are, the last time when I left here, everybody was congregating out in the parking lot talking. And they said, come see us. Don't go on your imagination, because we got a lot of people here living in the imagination rather than reality. I went. They explained to us all the resources in the community that they're pulling on to bring them in there. The place has a neat design. There's places over here where there's 4 to a room. And if you're good, you can get into 2 to a room. If you're good, you can get your own room. It just happens the building's that way, which gives people an incentive to get better. I was in there. These people aren't your juggies like what this wandering around. They were all alert, conscious. They dressed well. They kept the facility neat. I mean, they're good people. Something happened in their life that went wrong. They want to get back to their families. They want to get back to a normal life. I've talked to them. And everybody's worried about them being in a bad neighborhood. I was concerned about that. But they're restricted to the building. How can you get tempted by someone down the block if you're in the building? I don't know how to deal with this. I'm too rational. But they have done a good job of trying to make it right. I've dropped in spontaneously. I sat down and had supper with them, talking to people and they're alert, they're aware, they're into where they are, and they know where they want to be, and they know it's work to get from here to there. And Jeremy and Timothy are there to help people get from here to there. They're not there to maintain them while they're there and pick up the money so they can dump them out, still there. They want them to be better, and they've got doing everything they can in that facility to make them better, and they ain't going out in the street and relapsing. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Linda Shavers. Miss Shavers. Linda Shavers.
They said what I wanted to say.
They've already said it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Mr. Charles Walker, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Hello. Hello, how you guys doing? My name is Charles Walker. I'm a resident at 102 Robin Street, which is not that far off of Whittington. I've been a resident there for 7 years, sir, and it hasn't been no kind of problems up there. And I do want to let the record reflect to some of the residents that's from different residents that hasn't lived in our residence. I'm standing on the behalf of all of the residents around the Whittington Valley, off of Glade, and make a long story short, all of the areas in around me, all of the vicinity of it. Well, I want to let the record reflect that I'm not against the facility. Because when I was a kid, I went to facilities myself, but it wasn't dealing with drugs. But I do want to let everybody know in here is that people do need help. My mom used to be an alcoholic, and she went to the old school Quapaw, which is right over there by the park, by Whittington. So I know all about stuff like that. So it's not about the facility. It's about the people who go into the facility. This is what we all have to stop and take into consideration. You got drug dealers, you got drug users. People do all kind of drugs, but that's not the big picture. What everybody is focused on is it's a park. It's a park around that area. And that park has been there for a long time, ever since I was a kid. So to make a long story short, the Whittington area has always been like a safe haven. You know, we got Roanoke Missionary Baptist Church, which I used to attend, and the pastor's back there now. Okay, yeah, Roanoke. Now right up there, now they got a daycare center. I remember when I was a kid, the same place they talking about, it used to have a nursery right there a long time ago. And that area, when I was a kid, I'm talking about everybody used to go up there, play basketball. We did all of that. We had fun. And not to be pulling a race card or anything, but it was a whole bunch of African Americans at that time. Well, now I see a lot of Hispanics up there playing soccer, you know, enjoying themselves, and that's about all you see, mostly. But then up there at the Whittington Park, you don't hardly see nobody up there now. They got that brand new baseball field and all of that. But what it all sums up to is that it's all about the residents. And in my resident, we got a lot of, elderly people, and then we also have a lot of children. As far as drug activities, if somebody was going to be doing any kind of drug activities in my neighborhood, they would be the stupidest person you could ever meet. The reason why I say that is because we got a neighborhood watch. We got a neighborhood watch sign right out there by my house. And the police always drive up and down through there. You might have more domestic stuff going on up in my area than anything else. But for sex offenders and all of that, all that stuff is irrelevant. But me, I'm here standing on behalf of the residents, and I am against it being in that particular area, but I am not against the facility itself, just being in that particular area. Because we got that park right there, and it's a whole bunch of families and their children and all of that, and you have something like that, and it's not closed in, you're going to have somebody like, if they came from the park, they can come right there, and then they can, hey, you want to buy this or you want to do this?
Closing
That's pretty
comment.
much it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Emmanuel Jernigan. Emmanuel Jernigan, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Emmanuel Jernigan. I was born and raised up there on the street. And I remember that place before it even became a school, when they had the mountain and they blew it up. That's my home. And I'm not trying to stop progress, because I think progress is good. And I think we do need a drug facility. They got the rehab building, they got plenty of buildings around here, but I don't think they need it in that neighborhood. Like I said, I was born and raised there, no problem with progress. We need drug rehabs. But most drug facilities, they is manned by drug people that have been there before. They're not manned by people that's certified for the Department of Corrections. I worked in the Department of Corrections for 4 or 5 years. I worked as a police officer. I know that people do relapse. So if you get those sex offenders or drug dealers or however they sit them there, who's going to maintain them? They can't even maintain them in the Department of Corrections. So how is the ones y'all get that work there is going to maintain them? So I feel that that's a big no-no to put it in that community. There's a lot of communities in Hot Springs. Hey, I'm all for progress. I'm all for drug rehab, but I'm not for drug rehab in that neighborhood. Because what happens if they do relapse? What do they do then when they relapse? They don't have the qualification, the manpower to sustain that building. Like I said, I played in that park when I was a kid. I grew up in that area. That's my home. And I don't want them to, that drug rehab. Like I said, I'm all for recovery, but not in that neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Jeremy McKenzie, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Good evening, Jeremy McKenzie, 206 Little John Trail. First off, I'd like to thank you, Mayor, and members of the board for patiently and diligently taking an honest look at our project. This has drug on longer, I think, than any of us originally anticipated, but I do appreciate your thoroughness to make an accurate decision. I'm here tonight to ask you to affirm the Planning Commission's recent approval of the conditional use permit. I'm asking you to approve it as it was written with the current conditions. I think that we've worked very diligently with the Planning Commission, with the Hot Springs Zoning Department. We've done the best job that we're able to do to satisfy those conditions and to overcome the objections of the community, as well as the City of Hot Springs. We have made adjustments to our application, as you guys can note, with the number of participants that we originally were approved to house, and then came back voluntarily and reduced that number in an effort to satisfy objections from the community. We have built fencing. We built fencing before we were told to build fencing. We built fencing in an effort to satisfy the community, to provide separation between us and the park. Very nice fencing, and we think that that fencing adequately does that. Again, we just ask that you approve the permit as written. We responded to the appeal by both Mr. Toth and Ms. Wallace. We responded in writing. We don't have any objection to additional conditions as we stated in writing, to the extent that we stated in writing. We don't have any additional conditions. And so one of the members of the community that appealed asked this board again in the appeal process for you to remand this request back to the Planning Commission again. As you recall, we did that the last time that we met, and we believe that the Planning Commission did a good job with fact-finding and review of this application. And we ask that you approve the permit, affirm their decision as written. I appreciate the members of the community that have spoke on our behalf tonight. As you guys can recall, in previous meetings, we've had a lot of people here. Out of respect for our time and the members of this board, we didn't ask anybody to come here with us tonight. We feel like this board is informed, that the Planning Commission looked at the facts, that you guys have the facts, and that you're prepared to make an appropriate decision on that tonight. Regardless of what that decision is, let the record reflect that Covenant Recovery would respect that decision and we would move forward accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This completes those who have signed up to speak on this matter. Is there somebody who is in the audience that perhaps failed to be able to sign up and would like to address the board? Yes, please come.
I signed up, but I wasn't called.
Fanny?
Fanny Hill.
Yeah, I got check marks on everybody, unless there's a sheet I didn't get.
I was first on the list.
She signed up for the wrong item.
Oh, you signed up under a different item, but that's fine. Ms. Hill, please come forward and state your name, address, and district, please.
Okay. Excuse me. My name is Fanny Hill, now Anderson. I am at 373 Cedar Street, District 1, Hot Springs. I am here to express my concern. I am a lifetime resident of Hot Springs and of the Whittington Valley. And some of you know me from way back when, but I've lived all over the uptown area that we call uptown as opposed to downtown. But, excuse me, but my husband and I reared two sons in that area, and they both attended Douglas Elementary School in the building that is now being proposed for this site. And I want you to know, I'm not opposed to anyone being in rehab. Having had a son, my youngest son lost to drug abuse. He did attend rehab centers in other areas that were not in a neighborhood area. But I am not in judgment of what people need. I know there is definitely a need for rehab, for drugs, and other means of substance abuse. I would like to say I would just love to see that happen, and I would love to see it happen outside of a residential area. Of course, if it does happen there, I would just applaud everyone that attends and gets the services that they need, and they will be out in the community fully rehabbed and doing things that would be needful for them. I am certain that this is a good thing to happen. I just want you to know that I would just love to see it in another area of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe this completes those who had signed up. Was there anybody else that I might have missed? Thank you. Discussion amongst directors. Director Weatherford.
I don't know how the city has missed it, but that facility does not have a grease interceptor. And I mean, it's operated before, but that means that this facility can't operate unless it has a grease interceptor.
That's probably true. I'm not sure how that...
Well, I'm just saying he can't use the kitchen because it doesn't have a grease interceptor.
I think Bill's got something from Dennis Brunson on that.
Yeah.
But
Received information from Mr. Brunson, who is over our grease trap ordinance and facilitates that. He has met with the applicant at 276. They have arrangements for food to be catered in from a facility in Malvern. They won't be utilizing the kitchen for a communal feeding. However, they do have plans to do that in the future, and at that time, they will have to have that interceptor installed prior to that being permitted at the facility. And that will, there are exemptions within the requirements themselves. One of those is daycare centers that primarily serve microwave dishes using single service items. That's one of the closest things that you have to being catered in. But the applicant does understand that he will not be able to use that as a commercial kitchen until that interceptor is in place, and he'll need to sign some documents to that effect.
So he's gonna bring food in, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and take all of that back wherever it came from? Because he's not allowed to put anything in the sink in a disposal.
That is what he's committing to.
he will have to abide by the grease trap ordinance if he's going to operate. It really has nothing to do with the land use decision.
No, I'm not,
tonight, but-
I'm just saying it's,
Yeah.
is that in our,
We have an ordinance that.
he understands that.
Well, we have an ordinance that deals with grease trap requirements, yes, sir.
And I don't quite understand, I mean, that should also be part of, when Planning Commission is approving something to make sure everything is in place. To me, I may be wrong, but I'm just saying, if they are approving something, why are they not, have a checklist that this is done, this is done, this is done, and this is done?
Sure, well, I mean, for as long as we're talking hypothetically, if someone is thinking of buying a restaurant location that's no longer in business, and one of the contingencies that they put in the real estate contract was to get proper zoning.
Yeah, I understand it.
So, all of those things have to be complied with. They, have to pay their electric bill, they have to pay their water bill. But this is a land use decision. Mayor, unfortunately, before we go forward with any other discussion, I would ask that you give Director Holliday an opportunity to address the matter that Ms. West brought up earlier. This is a quasi-judicial determination, and we need to resolve that before we go forward with any further discussion.
Yeah, we want to ensure that all votes taken by individual directors is an appropriate vote, regardless whether they vote for or against a particular item. And so there was a claim made by the presenter that a discussion was had with her and Director Holliday for what she indicated was a considerable amount of time. And we just asked Director Holliday to address that, or whether or not she feels she should recuse from the vote on this issue.
Thank you. Yes, I'll address it. So it is true that Millie West and I had a conversation on the phone. The details of that conversation were around procedure, what happens in planning, what happens with conditional use when it comes to the board. I don't feel that in that conversation I was lobbied, nor did I don't feel that I indicated where I stood one way or another. I think that perhaps that understanding is because I did not come across as being sympathetic to the conversations that might have come about before that. But personally, I don't feel that I need to recuse myself. It was procedural based, and that comment about saying I can't talk about this is when the conversation went to a place that was specific to the details of the project. At any time, I'm happy to answer conversations about procedure, having been on the Planning Commission and now on the board. But like I said, when the conversation started to go to a place that was specific to this particular application and was not about procedure, that's when I said this is something that I could not talk about.
probably would ask for guidance from the city attorney. Obviously, we want to be able to have a vote that would not be challenged as a result of the opinion of others that a director voted when they should have recused. So I understand what Director Holliday's indicated, but I'm not certain how that would be looked at in another setting. So is there
And
any?
I'll defer to the city attorney's judgment.
Well, unfortunately, there's not any bright line rules to point to in a situation like this. It is merely a situation whether or not you feel like, as a juror, for example, if what you heard or what your discussion was about influences you in a way in which you do not feel like you can render a fair and impartial decision on the application before you tonight. I had preferred that this be disclosed ahead of time. That's the purpose of reminding everyone of a quasi-judicial procedure each time we have a conditional use. So at this point, we have, I don't know if it's her word against your word. I'm not interested in having her come up and argue with you about what was said. If you feel like you can render a fair and impartial decision, despite the conversation that you had with her on this issue, then I'll leave it with you.
Though at the same time, this is a resolution, so a simple majority would approve or disapprove, would reject the resolution, and in order to ensure that one side or the other doesn't feel that they have some ability to take further action at a higher level, serious consideration should be to recuse and allow those who have not had those conversations to be casting a vote, so that the decision of the board is the decision of the board and not reviewed in a judicial setting or some other administrative procedure.
And I agree with that. So, Brian, do you feel that this is something, regardless of which way that I vote, could be challenged based on the testimony of Millie West?
I think that's possible. I think this is one of those settings that, quite frankly, I anticipate us discussing this at another venue at another time, regardless of what happens tonight. It's just my gut.
Well, then I would say, out of respect for the amount of time that we have already spent on this and not possibly creating an opportunity for this to go any further, then I will recuse myself in order to hopefully let tonight be the final conversation on this item.
Very good. Thank you. Hard?
Ma'am?
Do we need a call?
You still.
No, we have. We're fine.
You got 5.
We're fine. Thank you. Any other discussion amongst directors?
I have a question for the city attorney. Brian, talk about the reasonable accommodation that happened October 25th on the property. What exactly does that mean for us tonight? I see what they've said and what's been written here, but just what exactly does that mean in this context?
Sure. It's something that we could talk about for a good little while. There are, week-long seminars that discuss reasonable accommodations. However,
I'd prefer that not be the case tonight, but
in the area of fair housing, ADA, and the Civil Rights Act, reasonable accommodations are afforded to those individuals who belong in a protected class. In this instance, in housing, in such a way that the action of the board would not be an impediment on their ability to receive the housing necessary for, in this case, treatment. That's
Okay.
what makes them a protected class, is not the use of alcohol or drugs, it's the addiction. And their attempt to get treatment for that. So in other cases, one at point is the Kings Ranch case that we talk about from time to time, ironically in the area of quasi-judicial review. There was a situation in Jonesboro, a facility who needed, according to them, in order to make it work, in order for it to pencil, in order for it to be feasible, they needed more people in their program than they had. They sought permission from Jonesboro to do that. Jonesboro said no. They requested a reasonable accommodations. Jonesboro said no, and so the federal lawsuit ensued. Ultimately, they got the number that they asked for in the judgment from the federal court. So I can't tell you what that number is for us to talk about what number is a reasonable accommodation. I don't know. The applicant has said that 32 is what they need. I have nothing before me that tells me otherwise. But that's, in this arena, that's what reasonable accommodations are about. It's not about workplace accommodations. It's not about any type of employment accommodations. This has to do with housing.
Okay, thank you.
Got a question.
Yes, Director Jones.
Explain the state license, them having the license versus us, to me.
Okay, well, first of all, let me reiterate that they do, as Mr. Toth said, they do not have that license. The applicant is here, his attorney is here, that they do not have a license from the Department of Community Corrections. So we are not trumped, so to speak. But I simply, when I was having that discussion with Ms. Selman in the preparation of her report to you, I wanted to point that out, that if that were the case, we would not be making that decision anyway. The license that they have is a license through the Department of Human Services for treatment. That agency of the state also has its own rules and regulations that they will have to abide by in order to keep that license viable. So the oversight that's mentioned in Mr. Toth's appeal would be by them. And so his request that we obtain copies of any existing licenses that have been issued, and his agreement that that is sufficient for the city's purposes of oversight, I think is reasonable. And I don't know that the applicant has a problem with that. I asked for their license last week. They provided it. It's in your packet.
Any further questions?
Yes.
have a
Director,
question.
yeah, Director Dobson.
Go ahead.
So, why are they asking for a conditional use then, if they're already a residential facility?
They are a residential facility. However, the lawsuit that I referred you to in the city of Pine Bluff had to do with the Department of Community Corrections, not with DHS. I do not want to speculate on whether or not the 2013 case out of Pine Bluff can be extrapolated into an argument that would apply to another state agency, but they might.
That's pretty much my question. Why do they need a conditional use if it's automatic that we have to give it?
That's not been ruled on.
But this is not exactly the same as Pine Bluff.
It is not exactly the same. No, ma'am. Both are state agencies. In the instance in Pine Bluff, the Department of Community Corrections actually owned the property. It wasn't just a licensee. So the issue would be, does the same kind of argument apply to another agency of the state under sovereign immunity? And then beyond that, does that extend to its licensees who are providing the services under that agency? I again, wouldn't want to speculate on how that might turn out, but that is something that we might be facing.
And can the Department of Corrections force us to rezone? Because we're basically conditional uses of rezone. in
Right.
effect.
It's my understanding this is not a Department of Corrections issue. They may or may not seek a license from the Department of Community Corrections. If they do, then they have to abide by their rules with regard to zoning compliance.
And C3 can be residential, because this is C3 right now.
Yes, C3 can be residential, as it's worded right now. The Hot Springs Code provides up to 8 in that classification. I'll point out, much has been made of the lawsuit involving New Choice at 710 West Grand in 2013. That organization did not request reasonable accommodations.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm going to recuse myself. I'm just going to put that on record.
We still have a majority of the board seated. Any other director or trustee, did you have another question?
Yes, I did. I'd like to offer a couple of amendments to this tonight. I would like to add that standard condition that Director Selman talked about tonight. I believe that's on page 69 of our packet after item number 14. The standard conditional use boilerplate. The applicant has affirmative duty to comply with all federal, state, and local laws now in effect or which may hereafter come into effect. The violation of such shall constitute grounds for revocation or modification of this permit by the Planning Commission per proper code there, 16279. And then and I don't know, I have another amendment too. I'd like to.
Well, let's stop. Let's pause right there.
Yes, sir.
So you put that in a form of a motion.
I make that motion.
Do we have a second on the motion to add what has been coined
I
the
didn't
standard
understand
boiler?
it.
Pardon?
I didn't understand what he said.
Well, it's on page 69. It's what Director Selman indicated was an oversight. It's a standard boilerplate terminology used in all conditional use permits.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
All right, I have Director Holliday and Weatherford recusing, Garcia absent. So I'm going to begin with Director Jones,
Aye.
Dobbs Smith,
Aye.
Trustee,
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Amendment is approved. You got a second amendment?
Yes, sir. Second amendment, when this originally came before us, I voted against the expansion to 48 beds. I would like to propose that we amend the 32 number to 24, which would be half the original capacity. And if we want to put a time frame on that and monitor performance of this facility, I don't know what conditions we could add, but I suppose if they want to expand past the 24, they could come back to the board at some point in the future.
So you put
Yeah,
that
I wouldn't put a time
Okay.
table on it, but yes,
All right.
they could.
They could come back at some point in the future. I'd make a motion to amend the 32 number to 24 as it appears in the resolution.
So we have an amendment to modify the current resolution, which calls for 32 to 24. Do we have a second on that? We have a second to reduce the number from 32 to 24. Need a second, or it will die for lack of a second. Fails for lack of a second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? So we're going to be voting on a motion to approve as amended, and we we had two amendments. One was to correct the vote from unanimous to 8-1 on the Planning Commission, and the other was to it was to put the boiler plate language in that was omitted. So please call the roll on the resolution as amended, please.
Yes, sir. Director Dobbs-Smith?
No.
Trustee?
Aye.
Jones?
No.
Mayor McCabe?
Aye. Resolution fails. That completes the action items for this evening. We're now under Board of Directors items for discussion.
Bring the other two back in.
Should we call the other two directors back in?
Yeah, we'll pause for a second. We're under Board of Directors items for discussion. Any director have items they'd like to bring forward?
I would like to say something in it,
Director Weatherford.
and I'm going to wing this. I don't have anything written down. I want to, and bear with me, I want to do a shout out to all healthcare workers at National Park, CHI, Christus Dubius. Today is number 72 for my daughter. She had COVID pneumonia again, and an infection that like to have killed her. But this Thursday or Friday, she probably moves to rehab, being 74 days, 75 days. But it's only because of the doctors and the healthcare workers.
But God.
And I want to also say to everyone that call me with prayers and text me and message me, met me on the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other directors have items for discussion or just comment? Certainly not at the heartfelt comments that Director Weatherford had, and our prayers and best wishes are with you, your daughter, and your family. I will make a comment that just related to downtown last night during Halloween in the area neighborhoods. You know, there was just a tremendous amount of people in the downtown area yesterday doing their trick-or-treating, or I guess it was Sunday night, excuse me. I want to do a shout out to Mackenzie Simon with Fat Bottom Girls Cupcake. She's a young lady, proprietor of that establishment, been very successful. And she bought 5,000 pounds of candy. And she had a little wagon. I called her, and she brought down a wagon full of boxes of candy and distributed it to merchants both sides of the street, both Bathhouse Row and the city side, merchants who wish to participate. And not only was it candy, but a gazillion glow sticks that were everywhere. And there was just a huge number of children and parents, enjoying, Halloween in a safe environment of downtown. We've heard of other venues in which children could go and receive candy and be in a safe environment. I was actually parking a car yesterday and thought I would outsmart everybody, and rather than looping down at the fountain and going back downtown where the traffic was bumper to bumper and crosswalks were filled with pedestrians, I decided to go over the mountain and descend on Prospect, Quapaw, which was a community neighborhood I lived in for 18 years, and I should have known better. Because when I got to that side, I go, how could I have forgotten? We moved in 2003, so it's 18 years at this other location, and it was wall-to-wall people as well. So, everybody appeared to be having a good time. A lot of homes had their various displays and scariness, and those were good memories there, but not when you're trying to get through traffic.
So where'd you park the car? That's what I want to know.
You left it in the street?
I could have got to my destination faster walking, but I would have had to go back and fetch the car at some point. No, but everybody had a really good time, and it was nice to see that. And then I guess next year it's on a Monday, so maybe it'll be a little more challenge. Well, it was a school day on Monday the following day, so we'll still have a school day following, so it's not on a Friday or Saturday. So
5 out of 7.
Yep. And then you get your leap year in there. So, but anyways, shout out to Simon, Miss Simon, for her efforts in making sure that merchants had what they needed, to participate if they so chose. So, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
One other thing, Mayor.
Yes.
I know we all get the emails, but the citizens out there and the people who watch us may not get this information that we get, but this came across today. U.S. News named us the #2 best relaxing getaway in the U.S.
Yes.
That just goes along with the other accolades that we have received over the years for what this city does. Not only the board, but the A&P Commission and the businesses and everything else. I just wanted to say that so that they heard it too.
Very good. Well, we do have one couple that has signed up to speak under the public comment section. So, Director.
Mayor, I move that we adjourn at 8:15.
So we have an adjournment, motion to adjourn by Director Jones. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Just give a minute in order for us to change over the cameras. Thank you.